Okay, fine. So everybody should keep in mute and video off, so that because as I can see already some alert message is coming that bandwidth is low and all these things. So that is why I have not switched on my video also. So let us just have this thing, and after the lecture is over, I will actually put this uh, presentation in the files area, so that everybody can see what I have covered today. Okay, fine. So this is as I said, it is a historical account of development of probability, statistics, data science, and so on. Okay, so let me proceed here. So the term data, that is quite old. There are instructions for collecting data for agriculture, how many workers are there in a particular job, crime related data, and also business related data. So if you go through Kautilya's Arthashastra, edited version of that is available in English and also in Hindi, and also maybe in some regional languages also. So there a lot of terms are there which are related to data. Similarly, if you look at the ancient Rome and Greece and the records of that, so there are references to the uh, data collection. So that means what is data? That thing is there for a long time. Okay, of course, in different traditions, the names were different. So now currently people talk about data science. So who is a data scientist and so on. So we are giving a rhetoric kind of definition. I think please keep keep yourself mute, otherwise there is a disturbance. Yeah, thank you. So who is a data scientist? A data scientist is a person who is better at statistics than any software engineer, and who is better at software engineering than any statistician. So I mean, this is of course a rhetoric kind of definition. And data analytics refers to techniques and methodologies to analyze, interpret data, and aid in decision making for the practitioner in his or her domain. So I will give you examples after some time. So firstly, let us look at these definitions. So the first phase in any problem is identification of the objectives and relevant data, its sources. For example, it could be primary sampling. That means you yourself collect the data, or you get it collected. And there is a secondary data. That means the data has been collected by someone and you make use of it. Hello, yes, somebody is saying something. Hello. You have any doubt? Somebody is asking a question.
I think they unmuted by mistakes.
Okay, sorry. Okay, fine. And then there is a continuously evolving data. I think all of you are aware of this pandemic situation, and many of you would be looking at the data which is available regarding COVID, for example. So I think many of you might have heard something called Wordometer. How many of you, some of you have understood what is a Wordometer? Any student, have you seen Wordometer? Worldometer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there, that is an example of continuously evolving data. You can see there, the numbers will be rapidly changing. For example, the number of corona patients, the number of deaths due to corona, the number of active cases, the number of cured cases, and also so once you go to the Worldometer site, then you will know about other things that is available in the Worldometer. For example, it has a data on population, it has a data on the crime, it has data on the fertility, it has data on agriculture, and so on. All of this is continuously evolving data, So they update minute to minute kind of thing. So you can see that there the numbers will be changing. So that is a continuously evolving data. So what is the primary data? So why I am telling all these things in a course on probability and statistics, because the primary use of probability and statistics is to analyze the data. So first of all, what is data? That itself should be known, because people think that any set of numbers that is given to them, it is a data. So no. So we will talk about all those things. So first of all, what is primary data? So most government organizations, they collect primary data on its citizens. For example, what is the expenditure on health by families? What is the expenditure on education? What is the expenditure on food, luxuries? What is the monthly income of persons or families? What is the employment status, and so on. In India, you have National Sample Survey Organization, that is called NSSO, and CSO, that is Central Statistical Organization. So these are central government organizations, and they were established just after the independence in 1949 and 1950, and they do this one. So you can just open the website of Ministry of Statistical Planning and Implementation, and you can see a lot of NSSO data. It is on health and family welfare, the data on employment, the data on agriculture production, the data on services. You can see a lot of data is available there. Because this National Sample Survey Organization, they continuously keep on doing surveys of various kinds, and so they record their data and they put. Governments and other organizations also routinely collect data on production in mining, manufacturing, output in services and agricultural sectors, sales, consumers' preferences, product prices, locations of warehouses, factories, workers in industries, their numbers, their working hours, pay packages, workplace facilities, lifetime data, births and deaths, mortality due to various factors, distribution of populations in geographical zones, data in sports, performances, outcomes, players in different categories according to sports, their expertise, their earnings, their longevity in sports. Then health data, that is proportion and prevalence of different diseases in populations. What is the expenditure on treatments? What are the recovery rates? What are the survival times, and so on. So I have just given an example of the kind of data that is available, that is being collected by governments or by other organizations on so many type of things are there. I mean, these are all, and anybody who is a serious, you can read the newspapers. If you pick up any day's newspaper, you will find a lot of data on various things. For example, almost every week you will see something about the growth rate. So what is the growth rate? That is the total value of the output from the manufacturing, from the agricultural, and from the services sector. You also routinely see the prices. So for example, petrol prices, the prices of LPG, and the prices of golds and silver. We also see a lot of data related to labor problems. So we say that the labor force is this much and their income is this much, and then government decides that they will increase the basic wages and so on. Then we also have a lot of data on the health. We have a lot of data on the sports and so on. What is secondary data? Most of the other sectors make use of the primary data, which is collected by other organizations for their limited objectives. If the primary data is from a reliable source, then the secondary data can be used to get the formal inferences. The use of secondary data is helpful as it saves time and resources for other organizations, so that they can effectively spend their resources on devising strategies for their implementations. So that is why the primary data should be collected very carefully, because then you can draw reliable inferences and make strategies. So for example, government has to do planning, or even a lot of organizations, they have to do a lot of planning for their future. So if the data that they are using is reliable, it is good, then their policies will be all right, because otherwise if the data is not reliable, then there is a problem. Okay, so it is important to understand the difference between complete enumeration and sampling from populations. A simple example is exit polls and election results. Okay, so if you have the complete counting of anything, then that is called basically census kind of thing. So for example, when you look at the election results, it is based on the voting of each and every voter who has voted in the election. So it is based on that. Whereas if you look at the exit polls or the opinion polls, they are based on samples. That means we are not asking everyone that whom you have voted, but it is only a subset of the or a sample of the voters whom we are asking. Similarly, in the opinion polls. The early methodologies for sampling and then development of statistical methods to analyze these, they have been developed by certain number of people. So I am just putting certain photographs here. The first one is Carl Pearson. He is considered to be the first professional statistician in the world. So of course he was from Britain, and he started developing statistical tools. Actually, it is in the late 19th century, there were a lot of studies which were related to genetics, or you can say eugenics, where the scientists, they were trying to establish racial superiority of Europeans over other races, for example, Oriental races or Asian races or African races. So they started developing certain statistical methods. Of course, finally the result was different because whatever be their aim, but ultimately when the correct methodologies were developed, then they found that yeah, there is no difference. All the races are having similar characteristics, but they wanted to show certain superiority. So Carl Pearson and then Ronald A. Fisher, he is actually considered to be the originator of most of the modern statistical techniques that we use today. And there is another person called Jerzy Neyman, who was a Polish-born statistician, and these people are credited with developing the entire early theory of statistical methods. So, of course, then they developed the sampling tools also to analyze this. So, in the same line, I am putting few more names here. This is E.S. Pearson. So, actually, this Neyman and Pearson, they are founders of the modern subject which we study in statistics, that is called the testing of hypothesis. Hello. Then there is a name here, P.C. Mahalanobis, who is actually founder of the statistics in India, and he instituted this Indian Statistical Institute. So most of the modern sampling methods are actually developed by him and his team. And this is another Indian statistician, P.V. Sukhatme. He developed a lot of sampling methods for agricultural surveys. And so anyway, one of the important books is Sampling Techniques by Cochrane. What are the major steps in a sample survey? This is important to know because large number of people, they think when they use statistical techniques that any data is given, then it is based on sample. That is not true. So in order to do a sample survey in a proper way, there are certain things which we need to tell. One is identifying the objectives, specifying the population to be sampled. For example, workers in dangerous tasks in the mines. Suppose we are looking at the strength of walls in underwater tunnels, life of equipments engaged in hazardous tasks, etc. So suppose we are talking about certain disaster management and so on, then what is the population that you need to look at? So you need to specify the population where you need to do the sampling. Well, when we say population, population does not mean it is human population only. Population could be cattle population. Population means a statistical population means a set of numerical values or attributes. Okay. So it could be colors, it could be incomes, it could be mortality data, and so on. So population, a statistical population is a set of numerical or qualitative values. What is the data to be collected? For example, if we have identified a problem, what is the data from that sample we need to collect? So many times what we do, we collect useless information. So that useless information then obscures the true things here. So we need to be careful that what we are actually collecting. For example, in a survey on health status, if there are questions on family income, then there may be avoidance in receiving the feedback. So for example, routinely you might have seen sometimes some health worker comes to your house and he asks whether any of the persons had dengue. So you just say, okay, anybody had it or nobody had it. So you can just give the answer there. Now at the same time, if that same person starts asking question what is the job that you are doing or your father is doing, and how much is the salary, then you will just ask him to get out. So then you will not get the proper feedback. Second thing is the degree of precision required in getting the data. How much accuracy is required? So if we want 100% accuracy, then many times it delays the process. There is escalation in the costs, and it may not be really very useful. So for example, I will tell you, currently everybody is looking at the data related to the COVID, and we have heard about that mistakes are errors in the reporting. So somewhere people say there is a under reporting, and in some places people are saying there is an over reporting. And we have seen the causes of both of these things. So now if you look at the total number of things, what is happening is that the under reporting and the over reporting cases, they cancel out each other. And therefore, if we look at the total data, it is almost approximately correct. And it has been found to be true now in the secondary studies, which are now, because already it is almost a year from the time the COVID has started. And in most of the countries, it has been now found that over reporting, under reporting, or misreporting, it has cancelled out most of the things, and therefore the final data that is available now, it is approximately correct. Then methods of measurement. In a health survey, it may be a questionnaire based or based on actual checkup by medical professionals. So we have to identify that what is our aim, whether we need the actual thing or whether we need to ask the question. So if it is questionnaire based, it becomes a social sciences survey, and if it is actual checkup by medical professionals, then it becomes a scientific survey based on medicine. In a safety checkup in industrial unit, well, it could be based on interview with the managers or previous records, or there can be an actual safety audit by the professionals. So for example, if we are asking, say, managers and supervisors, okay, how many accidents were there and what are the difficulties that your staff is facing, then it is a questionnaire based survey. Whereas a professional survey could mean that a team of safety persons who are involved in this, engineers and so on, and they actually go and do the survey. So there is a difference between the two studies. One can find out many times that there is a variation in the two. For example, if we are looking at, say achievements of the students in academics, say school children, and we ask only the principals and the school teachers that how the children are doing, and so they may give a very rosy picture of their achievements. Whereas if there is an actual achievement test conducted on those children, then the results are quite different, and it has been observed many times. For example, we look at the performance of, say, engineering students, and we observe that students are getting 8 CGPA or 9 CGPA and so on in different engineering institutions. But when the interviews are conducted for certain jobs and certain basic questions are asked, then the students are unable to answer. So there is a difference between the perception of the faculty members as well and the people who are from the industry, because they are asking the actual knowledge. And also, of course, many times the students go to interviews for academic positions or academic this one, that time also the exact situation is there. Then we also need to identify the sampling frame. So for example, what is the unit of the population to be sampled? So for example, is it an electronic item, or is it manufacturing unit for that electronic item, or is it individuals who are using that electronic item, or is it families which are using those electronic items, or towns and so on. So I'll just tell you one simple thing. So for example, there is a emphasis by the government to use LED lights. Okay. Now earlier the usual lights were there and they have been replaced by LED lights. So now one question could be the say lifetime of those, how much time it comes, like when you install and the time of usage. So for example, a particular light may be working for 10 hours or 100 hours, or it could be working for 500 hours and so on. So in order to study this, we want to find out. So one thing could be that from the factories we take the sample of LEDs, or secondly it could be we look at the families. So from households, that how many of the LEDs they are using, what is the average life of those, or we look at in a town and so on. So the sampling frame needs to be identified. Some of the important sampling methods are simple random sampling with or without replacement. I am not getting into the details of these because these are the different techniques. Well, by the name simple random sampling, it means that we just allocate equal probability to each unit of the population to be selected in the sample. With replacement means that we put it back and then again for the second unit we take from the same population. In without replacement, that unit cannot be taken again. This is one of the, the most straightforward ways of sampling. Now a lot of people, they have some confusion regarding this process. So they say that, okay, you pick up any person, then it is randomly selected, or you pick up any unit, then it is randomly selected. No. When we have simple random sampling, then each unit of the population must have the same probability of getting selected. So therefore, certain random number process or certain random numbers or certain random number tables or certain random process should be used to do this simple random sampling. Is this slide visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
fine. Yeah, because I saw some error message here, so I thought maybe it is not visible. Okay, fine. Now, in most of the times when we are doing the sampling, actually the population is very diversified population. So, for example, in a health survey, we may look at the, say for example, we are doing health survey in India. So we may look at the health of people who are in upper income group or in the middle income group or in the lower income group. We may look at the systematic sampling. We may look at single stage, two stage, multi-stage sampling. We may use double sampling, subsampling, cluster sampling, and bootstrapping and so on. So I have just mentioned these things. I am not explaining any of these. So somebody who is interested in the sampling methodologies, you can look at the books. I have mentioned one book here, sampling techniques. So there are a number of books, and if somebody has to really do the sampling, then he has to use one of those methods. We always prefer to do a pre-test because it improves the quality of the survey. And what is the organization of the field work? We should identify who are the workers who will collect the data. They should be trained, and the first few data sets should be checked whether these workers who are collecting the data, are they doing them properly, or they are casually doing the data collection so that there are a lot of mistakes. Then there is a cleaning and preparation of the data. So the data may have missing values, incorrect entries, or there may be inconsistencies. So these should be very properly inspected to make the data conducive for further modeling and analysis. After doing the data collection and cleaning the data and preparing the data for the analysis, then statistical modeling is done. So the data is manipulated to extract information out of it. The mathematical foundation of data science is statistics and probability. So now we come to our topic that I mentioned to you, that why we have to study the probability and statistics. So once the real world problems, they yield a lot of data, and to analyze that data we use the probability and statistical methods. So without having a clear knowledge of statistics and probability, there is a possibility of misinterpreting data and reaching at incorrect conclusions. So this leads to harmful consequences for companies, industries, economy, etc. So therefore, probability and statistics play a most important role in data science and data analytics. So all those students, I mean, because most of you might have been affected by the buzzwords data science. There is a course on data science, and in the companies they are asking for data scientists and so on. So what do you need here is a sound knowledge of probability and statistical methods so that you can become a good data scientist. So now let me go to the probability as well as statistics. So okay, when we talk about probability, the terminology that is normally used has terms such as chance, randomness, uncertainty, probably. So we use such things, isn't it? In a everyday, so there is every chance that I may not go to college today. There is every chance that I may miss my train. Probably it will rain today. So these are statements which are made in day-to-day life in a usual sense, and they are in use from very long time. So it has been realized long back that things do not happen as they are planned, and therefore the chance, the stochastic or randomness, etc. have been used. So for example, it is guessed that there are mineral deposits in a specified area. Now there is an uncertainty, so then mining will be done there, and certain mining methods are used to check whether there is a mineral deposit in a particular area. You may remember that maybe I think almost a year back it was mentioned that in a particular area of Uttar Pradesh, it was said that there is a large gold deposits. Okay. I think some of you might have read the news in newspapers or in TV, etc. And it was said that the gold deposits are of the value which is equal to the total amount of gold which is currently available in India. So it was a huge news, but then ultimately it was proved to be false. So uncertainty. Estimate of total deposits of minerals. Okay, so when the mining is done, then it needs to be specified that how much are the total deposits, because accordingly the government or the other companies, mining companies, they will create the resources for that. So it is unspecified. So what is the safety required for extracting mineral deposit from specific mines? So for example, inside the mines there are soft soil, the walls can be soft or hard and so on. So what is the safety level required for extracting those things? Then next question is, for example, what is the quality of mineral deposits from the specified mines? So for example, I think all of you know about the quality of say coal. So for example, there is a coal which is collected from mines in Jharkhand, in Odisha and in West Bengal. And then there are different type, like there is some good quality coal, there is a medium quality coal, there is a very good quality coal. And it is said that in India the quality of coal is not very good. So very good quality coal is imported from Australia. Then amount of rainfall during a monsoon season in a specified area, in a specified state, in a country, over a day or a week or a month or a season. So this is all stochastic. It is random. We don't know exactly how much it will happen. Over a period of time, you know how much it will be there, but suppose I say this week how much rain will be there, it cannot be predicted. What is the weather tomorrow? It is a